Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Idea Lab. We've got a really interesting topic that was started in part by conversations we were having with a lot of home-based businesses. It's often said that businesses start out of a garage on the West Coast and out of a kitchen on the East Coast, but the conversations we've been having suggest that in the West here, they start out of a second bedroom. So as those conversations of people saying, hey, Dave, my business is just getting too big for that second bedroom, and we need to look for a new space. That had us reach out to Heather Taylor of Impact Commercial and asked her to give us a little pointers on what that begins to look like. Heather, take it away.
Hey, thank you guys. I'm super excited. I know the pandemic has been tough on a lot of businesses, but what we see in usually it's just a recession, not a pandemic, but is this regrowth of new businesses. So people maybe are reinventing their business, changing the way it ran before, or just starting a whole new business altogether. So we created kind of a little worksheet, and I've broken it down, and I'll share it on this PowerPoint, but I can give you the worksheet as well later if need be, but it's kind of like a tool to guide through it. And I do always recommend that everybody have a broker help them or an attorney, just because it is a legal binding document if you do go into a commercial space, and there could be ramifications. One of the things everybody's working on right now is if somebody was stuck in a lease, what if there's another pandemic or another shutdown? And really there hasn't been anything definitive, at least in the state of Colorado, is what happens. And so that's why I think it's so good to have a broker, an attorney on your side, because usually these leases are a little bit longer term, 3 years, 5 years, and who knows what's going to happen anymore. So let me start to share my screen here. And I just, like I said, took my spreadsheet that I created and then turned it into a PowerPoint for everybody. So kind of at the beginning, what we see, kind of the same thing I was saying, in this downturn, we see so many businesses that, came out of a great idea, and somebody's using their garage or their kitchen or a bedroom. And, especially with virtual learning and everything else that you're having to deal with, it can be kind of hard. And so if somebody's looking, they've made it as far as they can in their house, and then they're looking to build a bigger team, right? Because maybe they're getting so many calls or need to meet with people. So if you're looking to build that bigger team, sometimes it's important to go to that commercial space, or if you want to elevate your business's visibility. So you could even find a space that has, signage, or even the co-tenants, in an office building, if you want to be next to somebody who gets a lot of referrals, we see that as well. Also, when you're smaller, usually municipalities don't really care if you have a business out of your home, but as you get more successful and people hear about you and you're doing well, you could be in violation of your HOA or either, zoning rules and be non-compliant. So that is one of the downsides too. Once you get going and you're so busy, you might want to stay at home, but you can't, because of rules and regulations. The other reason we see a lot of people reaching out to us now is, like I said, they just met their capacity in their garage. They can't possibly make any more room to make any more widgets, whatever it might be. So, productivity is suffering, or you've hit that plateau as well. So you just can't go any further with the confined space that you're in. And I'm not a residential broker, but I hear home prices are crazy. So maybe it is less expensive to get a commercial space than buying a new house, a bigger house or something. So this could be an alternative to that. So you want to assemble this team of experts, a commercial broker, like I said. If you have a lot of fixtures or equipment, and we call that FF&E, so furnitures, fixtures, and equipment that you might need for this space, usually a landlord isn't going to pay to help you with those items. If it's something that's improving the space that a lot of tenants can use, then they'll help contribute some money. But if it is, really specific to your business, maybe you're a hairstylist and, you need the chairs or different things like that, the landlord really doesn't care and not going to contribute. So you might need a lender or an SBA lender. And my family is all SBA lenders, so I hear this spiel from them all the time, but I do know there's some great deals right now, and people are getting 6 months free, so not even having to pay their SBA loan for 6 months. So it's a great way also to get started. So you need your commercial broker, you need a lender. An accountant's always super important as well. Sometimes you can write off the useful life of that equipment. So you kind of want to know and get that set up in the beginning so you have those extra tax write-offs once you're moving into a commercial space. And then an attorney. By law, I'm required to recommend everybody have an attorney review the document because, like I said, it is a legal binding document. Force majeure was kind of what everybody was leaning on when the pandemic started, and that was, you know, a natural disaster, right? Would make it so you didn't have to pay your lease. Well, then everybody deemed that this pandemic wasn't really a natural disaster. So then people were kind of left like, what do I do? So then we did invoke, you know, eviction clauses and stuff like that to help preserve tenants. But it is just important to have that attorney kind of look at everything. Once you have your team assembled, then we'll do a needs analysis. We'll look at, you know, timing, you know, how fast do you need this? Where are your key decision makers? Maybe you have a team that you built and where do they live? You know, we need to look at that in relationship to the location that you're looking at. Making a budget is super important. That would include the projected rent. So rent is always negotiable. So that's why we call it kind of projected rent. Your estimated utilities. So hopefully there was a tenant in there before and we can look back at the utility bills and kind of see what they were paying. Insurance, you can use any insurance agent. Janitorial if you need it. Moving cost, those renovations if you do need to change something in the space. Maintenance or upkeep. So just like an HOA in your neighborhood, there are many owners associations for commercial projects as well. And so really it saves you money in the end, but sometimes people don't budget for that. So that would be maybe trash removal, right? Everybody uses the same trash company, so it's in and out quick and save money, or snow removal. All those things can be that extra maintenance expense. Permits and license if you need those as well. So there's a lot of things that go into that budget, and a broker can help you kind of just remind you of those so that you get all those items kind of together. And then looking at what type of space or what kind of building you need. Maybe where are your competitors? Maybe you like being next to your competitor because you're so unique, or maybe you want to be away from your competitor. That changes often as well. So that's one thing to look at. You know, parameters, traveling time, where your employees are. I have one company that has to be next to public transportation. So when you're hiring new employees and everyone's kind of coming out of this pandemic, maybe there are many employees that are going to be taking public transportation and looking at where those bus stops are. Maybe you need high traffic counts, other amenities, you never know, and just the demographics of that area. So we would look through all those analysis when we're looking at a space, but you might come in this first beginning with some ideas of what you have to have. And then timing or projected schedule. And then we also go over with people the lease versus own benefit analysis, because yes, usually it is less expensive to own, but maybe your projection plan and your growth plan makes it so that a lease is better. You're not putting all your money into one location. Maybe you want 9. So we'll look at those lease versus own decisions and see what's best. Identifying a location and those negotiations, those are usually done through a letter of intent. So kind of unlike a purchase contract you would have on a house, a letter of intent is non-binding and will go back and forth. It usually starts with the tenant saying, these are my wishes, my requests, what I need. Maybe it's term, maybe you need 5 months free rent to get started. You never know. So we would work through all that. We would look at the design and fit of the space and see, can we fit 5 offices? Maybe you need 5 offices or plumbing, or who knows. So we'll look at that design fit. And those deal points all go into that letter of intent. What is the landlord going to contribute to having you there as a tenant too? Because you also bring great value to a project. And landlords are a little pickier right now with tenants, just because there were so many, unfortunately, that weren't able to make it. So they do want to make sure that you'd be a good fit financially, but also just a good fit in the tenant mix if there's multiple tenants in a building. And the broker would advocate for your best interests, work through those negotiations, and you usually have a back and forth until both sides, the goal is to make both sides relatively happy. No one's ever winning everything, but make them relatively happy, and then you have a good deal. We might have supporting documents that we provide as well. So that could be tax returns from your business if you've been around that long. If you haven't, then it might just be financial forms. Usually landlords want to see the past 3 years of either your company tax returns or personal tax returns. And then if you are getting a loan, if you can bring that pre-qualification letter from that lender, that always helps significantly as well. And then after we've kind of gone through that whole negotiation phase, we're looking at the investigation and review. Kind of sometimes you end up in the best situation with 3 of the best properties, right? Any 3 would work. You've really got a great deal at all 3, and then it will come down to pros and cons of each property. Maybe there's a little slight better traffic count, or it's a little closer to your office, who knows? Or, maybe that landlord has taken greater COVID precautions. If you're an office building, I know a lot of people are talking about that, and the elevators and the extra things that those landlords have done. So that might also go on to the pros. Efficiency analysis is how efficient is space 1 compared to space 2 for your business, and maybe even efficiency looking at your growth, how you plan to grow. Hey, can I grow in this space, or will this space only work for a year if I continue to be this successful? So looking at that too. If you do, let's say you sign a lease and you're in that space and you do just go gangbusters and you're like, what do I do now? The best thing is to have that conversation at the very beginning with the landlord. Hey, what happens if I outgrow this space? Can I move to another space? What are your other properties? Kind of knowing that ahead of time helps as well. And then just double checking all the zoning rules and regulations so that you can be fully successful and not maybe go into a space and you're starting to build it out and then zoning comes and they're like, you're not supposed to be here. So double checking all the zoning and regulations that you need for that space. We do have a lot of people who maybe need to do upgrades to that space. I have a client who has a really high electrical power need. And so the fire department came in and said, we need to make the walls thicker so they have a higher fire rating. So things like that that we might need to look at and also negotiate with the landlord as to who's going to pay for that. Yes, it's a requirement that the tenant needs, but also the landlord doesn't want the building to be burnt down. So it can be a negotiation between both sides. And then post execution. So we've gone through all the negotiations. We've picked this space. It's the best space for the company. We know our future expansion plans if need be. And so we're committed. We've done this. This is a great space. So then after that, it would be nice if you sign this document and poof, your space is ready, but it usually doesn't happen like that. Now you got to plan on the renovations in the space. If you need be moving, sometimes we forget, like when you are working in a space for so long, how much stuff you accumulate and how are you going to get that all moved, and what is the plan for setting up phone and internet. Maybe you do need to buy new furniture, which I don't suggest. There's so many great deals for furniture out there, but maybe you need some new furniture or signage. These signage companies are so overbooked because, like I said, it's great. There's a lot of new businesses coming out. So, you don't want to open no signage and no one knows where you're at. So planning the signage, different things like that. Then also for a purchase, we will have, we've gone under contract and you're buying this building, but you'll have an inspection and an appraisal and the environmental inspection. So all of those things, the broker is going to help you navigate through. For a lease, we'll need to track those improvements. If we are changing stuff in the space, are the contractors getting it done? Are we getting the permits and licensing in place? And then once everything's done, then you get to move in and celebrate. One other thing that's not on this spreadsheet that I just kind of want to talk about real quickly, because a lot of people ask me, lease rates are oftentimes very confusing. And we do see that going forward, the most commonly used lease rate is going to be what's called a triple net lease rate. And each landlord can do this different. There's no state law or no requirement on how they do this, but really the reason why we see the triple net lease rates moving forward is because you have two numbers in the lease rate. So one number is your base rent. So let's say I'm renting a retail space and it's $20 a square foot triple net. So that $20 is my base rent, but it's a negotiable number. So it's separated out from the expenses, which is the triple net number. I can negotiate this $20 all day long. It depends on how long my lease is, what I'm asking the landlord to do, what I'm contributing. And so this number changes up and down, up and down. It's usually pretty close to the $20, but it's our negotiating point. The other number is our expenses. So it might be $5 in expenses or triple net. The NNN stands for property taxes, property insurance, and property maintenance. Why that's separated out is because that is a pass-through expense. Whether you are a tenant or not, the landlord's going to have to pay this number to, you know, whoever it might be, the assessor or the property tax person. So what is going to happen and why we see that moving forward right now, property taxes, we don't see them increasing, right? Everyone's committed to kind of keeping property taxes where they are so that people can come out of this pandemic. But on the flip side, with all of this growth and development, we know that values are still ticking up, right? So today, if you signed a lease with a landlord, property taxes are maybe $30,000 a year, right? But in a couple years, it could increase significantly. And so they want the right to pass that expense on to you. So if property values increase, then also property insurance increases. And, you know, everything, there is a cost of living that goes up too, maybe on the snow removal, the parking lot lights, the landscaping, all that goes into that maintenance number. So the landlord wants to reserve the right to raise that number as need be. So that's why you have these two numbers and why they're separated. And we feel like that's going to be the most likely used type of lease going forward because of that, and because they'll be able to pass those expenses directly on to the tenant and not have to pay them themselves or absorb that cost as a landlord. So that's kind of the short and dirty. I know that was a lot of information, so I'm always available to help anybody with any questions. If there's anybody who does need to sublease their space, we've been having a lot of success with that. If they're like, you know, I was in a retail location and now I need to be in an industrial location, we can help with that too. We really want to be here to make everybody successful if we can. Thank you so much.